Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. How are you, buddy?
Oh, doing all right. Other than still not being able to post on Facebook, but other than
Well,
that,
it's overrated,
good.
apparently,
Yeah, it's fine. We're gonna share it, and it's gonna be great. I got the notification again. I posted that my babysitter fell through, and I couldn't go to a Halloween party. Got my account restricted again.
What is
And
that? Be honest with our viewers, Kevin. What is that code for? Is that some sort of Proud Boy meetup? What is that?
That's Facebook assumes like it's
Yeah.
it's in there, it's in the database. I
Well, I
associate
think
with enough radicals. It's got to be
yeah,
something.
that kind of talk in England gets you a visit from the local constable, whatever,
Yeah,
constabulary. You know the word I want to say.
exactly. So something like that. It's but anyway, we're gonna talk about
Kelly.
a bunch of stuff today.
Yeah,
Moral equivalence.
the word's being just abused all over the place. Like what they're talking about, it's wild. The way they're talking about it.
Yeah, so we'll
Thank
talk
you.
about
Constabulary. There it is.
constabulary.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's the word.
the
That's the
the
word I was trying to
constables.
use.
The constables.
But that's what I settled on because that was easier. The
Yeah.
constables are coming.
Yeah, but anyway, so we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about the moral equivalence in the Israel
Yeah.
Palestine conflict, moral
Yeah.
equivalent or not, and also maybe lead off with like what Governor Hochul is doing right
Yeah.
now.
On her way.
Always finding good ways to use our taxpayer dollars and glorify herself as usual.
She's going to run for president, Kevin.
She is. But yeah, that's definitely we're gonna talk about that. Maybe we'll get to some Rochester issues too, uh, and then maybe we'll get to some other like national stuff as well, just
Yeah.
national
Boy, Jim
shenanigans.
Jordan's having a tougher time than I anticipated.
Yeah, couldn't happen to a better guy.
Well,
Um, but so
Oh,
we'll talk about all that stuff, and yeah, this time around, I'm gonna do Tim. I'm gonna remember to play our intro. I forgot the intro last time.
oh, did you?
I totally did.
Whoops.
So for you listeners out there, we're gonna play that.
All right.
All right, and we're gonna get started now.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. How are you, buddy?
Living the dream, Tim. Living the dream. And
All
thank
right.
you, WYSL audience, for joining us today on A Free Solution, and our online audience too on YouTube, Facebook groups, and Twitter. Appreciate all y'all listening today. And we're gonna talk about like the current events, as we often do. We're gonna talk about the Israel-Palestine conflict. We're gonna talk about what Kathy Hochul is doing in relation to this, and maybe a few other things as well. Some goofiness in national politics, as we often do. And I think I want to start with the New York State thing. I think I want to start with Kathy Hochul. Let's keep it to New York State stuff first, because it's relevant in the midst of all this other stuff going on. Kathy Hochul has decided that she is going to take a trip to Israel. She's going to represent New York State, and head over there and do something. Tim, are you proud of our governor? Oh no, Tim, did I lose you, bud? Give me frozen look. Oh no. Wait, Tim. So I think I may have lost Tim, folks. So we'll wait till he comes back and try to continue on with the show. And but just to give you all some additional context, what's going on here. Um, uh, Governor Hochul has decided she's gonna. I'll read the quote from her. She said, "During these difficult times, more important than ever for New York to show up in support of Israel. Tomorrow, I'll be traveling to Israel for solidarity mission, where I plan to meet with diplomatic leaders and communities who have been devastated by the horrific Hamas attacks. New York will show the world that we stand with Israel today, tomorrow, and forever." Oh, I lose everybody. Tim is frozen. It's upstate Wi-Fi. Shelly says, I think we're gonna have to start this part of the show over. Tim, are you back? Tim, you back with me?
I'm here, brother. As occasionally I'm having some real kind of connectivity issues. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh my God.
You can't hear me. I gotta make sure I'm coming
the whole
over.
time either, but you're cutting in and out. I think that I'm having connectivity issues, Kevin, and I think we're gonna either have to do this tomorrow night or something, or try again in a little while.
Tim, you're gonna need to get better internet. Is what you're gonna.
All right.
That's what you're gonna need
I will
to
do that.
Just get that. If you could do that within the next 5 minutes, that'd be great.
All right.
I think that's
Let me try 5 minutes and we'll see. Give me 5 minutes and we'll see what we can do, and then we'll go live again. Because look at this, we've got people joining us. I'm really sorry, everybody. This is the curse of the internet connection.
yeah. All right. Is that what we want to do, Tim? Do you want? You think you're good now? We can go. We can start over.
All right, I'm ready. It seems to be working. I don't know.
Seems to be working all right. So I'm pretty sure. John says my internet's going in now. I'm pretty sure I'm all right. Like I'm literally. I'll tell you guys listening online. I'm sitting like not right next to, but like 3 feet from my Wi-Fi router, getting the straight 5G coming right at me.
Nice.
And yeah, so yeah, Trisha says don't stop now. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start because for editing purposes, it's gonna make it a lot easier if I say like we're gonna start at a certain time.
Okay. Let's try it.
So we'll do that. We'll line it up. I'm gonna say we're gonna start at 8:30, and I'm gonna pretend like we're starting the radio show over again. So you guys listening, appreciate y'all hanging with us. 3.
Inside baseball.
Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. It's a fantastic night here in upstate New York.
That's right. You are here and you're staying here, and it's going to be a good show, folks. Thanks. If you're listening on WYSL, appreciate y'all listening here. Or if you're listening online on the Facebook group, the YouTube pages, the Twitter accounts, wherever you're listening, appreciate y'all being here. And we're going to talk about some current events, as we often do. We're going to talk about the Israel-Palestine stuff. We're going to talk about moral equivalence in this conflict, or if there is any. And I think we're going to start with the New York State stuff. We're going to start with what Kathy Hochul is doing, and I'm going to read off. So what she's doing is she is traveling to Israel. She's going with a coalition of governors to travel to Israel, and I'm going to read off her. She put out a press release that she's going to be traveling today, Tuesday, and says during these difficult times, it's more important than ever for New York to show up in support of Israel. Tomorrow, I'll be traveling to Israel for solidarity mission, where I plan to meet with diplomatic leaders and communities who have been devastated by the horrific Hamas attacks. New York will show that we stand with Israel today, tomorrow, and forever. So, Tim, what are your thoughts on this? What was is this? Make you excited for Governor Hochul? Is she doing the right thing? Is she virtue signaling to get your vote effectively? Like,
Well, she certainly is. It is a big, huge virtue signal. I have a hard time digesting it when governors get involved in doing things like this. Cuomo was another one, taking
yep,
taxpayer money and donating $50 million to Puerto Rico, putting their face and our tax dollars on the front page of the news to make some sort of point. Now, am I sympathetic to her wanting to, show support for Israel right now? Yes. Do I think that's her actual job to provide like some sort of emissary to Israel when we have all of our political machinery is already focused on Israel, and we're going to try to help this issue as much as we can. And so I feel like it's kind of like front page headline grabbing stuff. Do you know what I'm saying,
yeah.
Kevin? Like
Well, no,
I
it's what she does all the time. We talked about a couple other instances of Governor Hochul doing this. Like she's trying to chase the headlines and ride the coattails of, and some politicians do all that. Ride the coattails of, like, what's going on, and like, I don't know, like, to me, like, maybe outside of the context of all this other stuff, it would strike me as more sincere. But to me, it
right.
does, like, it maybe it isn't, but it strikes me in particular as insincere coming from her, given like her other pattern of doing this sort of thing, where she jumps on and tries to code herself in like the off glow of whatever else is going on, or like show that she's on the right side of things. And yeah, like, again, it's also to me a little bit weird too, as you said, like Governor Cuomo did this with, like, Puerto Rico is at least like a a U.S. territory, of which there are a lot of people in New York from Puerto Rico, even though it still was strange for the governor to be doing this type of thing. This is like international, which is even more like bizarre to me. And I understand like wanting to show support for like the Jewish community, where like many of them, might have been from Israel at one point in time or no relatives over there. Okay, yeah, I get that, but I don't know. Like it's like, to me, like the really it's strange to me. Like, it just this whole thing. Like, it's strange to me for a governor to jump in this way in an international issue, unless she's like running for president or something, which she may very well be.
I certainly saw some quotes from her where she could straighten out certain issues that the country's facing immediately. Like she's got game plans, she's got ideas, and she's got, you know, resolution and the resolute behavior to resolve these things. Um, but I still think that being the governor of New York State, one of the largest states, even though we're losing population hand over fist, we can't import immigrants from Mexico fast enough to stop our population drain. And here she
Right.
is going to Israel. When
Yeah,
when
like, again,
all
like, and it's going over there too. Like, what? Why does she need to go over there in what is now like an active war zone? Like, why?
for valor and for virtue signaling, I guess. Like, look, I think that's what it really boils down to for me. But again, I don't want to. I think that her heart's in the right place. I'll give her that benefit of the doubt. But she has a full time job taking care of New York State. Maybe I'm being too simplistic here, but it just that feels more real to me than getting her name on the front pages of the papers going to Israel. Now, she's not the only one who's going, though, Kevin.
No, she's not. There are several other governors that are going. I was trying to find a list of those. But yeah, it's
We've had
let's see.
senators have gone over there. Chuck Schumer, Mitt Romney. I saw them get
Yeah,
hauled
well,
off the
senators
tarmac.
at least make sense to me. Like,
Arguably, right? But it's still a little virtue. I still feel like it's a virtue signaling kind of
maybe,
deal.
but like the Senate, like the constitutional like job of the Senate is like sort of international affairs, right? Like that is legitimately part of what they do.
Okay.
And need, like, I get it a little bit more in that, like, they need to evaluate like any, not that the Senate ever actually does this anymore, but they're supposed to evaluate any like potential like options for like alliances and treaties and like appropriations for like weapons going to Israel. Like, they should be like evaluating that. So I get a member of the House or the Senate going over and talking with folks and like engaging in some of their legitimate duties in terms of foreign affairs. Um the governor doesn't really like have that in the same way. I mean, even though like
Yeah, I
there
was gonna
there are
ask you.
things like where like New York State does work with like other countries, other governments occasionally on stuff, but like it's not really the same thing. Usually it's a federal issue.
Yeah, well, arguably, disaster relief was Cuomo's big issue, and certainly I was. Again, that's an area where I was sympathetic to the people of Puerto Rico. They had been hit by a big disaster. Federal aid was already on its way, and then somehow he managed to just find $50 million to put his name on the front page of the paper. So, again, Joe Biden is heading over there, Kevin. Like that, he seems like a guy that should be involved with foreign affairs. The Secretary of State is over there,
Yeah,
and now
that
we have
that those all make sense. Like
they do, right? Like I'm
yeah,
like,
like
all
yeah,
right with
like we
that.
can talk about like whether or not Biden's doing the right thing in any given situation, but it does make sense for him to like be
Mhm.
over there and like like
He
not getting involved in the way like the military way, but getting involved in trying to like nudge people towards peace.
Yeah, the communications coming out of there out of the administration currently are not the worst communications that have ever come out of there. Like actually on some level, and
What a
this is
compliment.
kind of
Wow, Tim.
gross.
Calm
Yeah,
down.
I know this is kind of gross. Like war kind of brings out the best in people in a way. So the Biden administration saying, "Look, we've we want to find a way to support Israel and help them protect themselves. And we want to remind everybody that there's human beings in the Gaza Strip that are probably innocent and that they probably need supplies. And we want to have that conversation." And they're saying things like that like are not at least not offensive, right? Like what's the end result? You know,
Right.
the old broken windows fallacy of here, let's give them bombs to blow up and we'll grow our GDP. But it, it's okay. It's better than the alternative of him saying something stupid, like he always does. So,
Right. Yeah, that's
like
like no,
like
so far like I'm cautiously optimistic about some of that. I mean, we'll see. It's like same thing with Ukraine. Like I thought he was like making the right like semi-neutral stances with Ukraine initially, but also like there's a lot of funding that's happening too that, it's
sure.
and I said this last week. I think this is a conflict like from a military perspective, like there's even less like justification for it because like Israel has like their own capacities and capabilities. And so it's probably not necessary or possibly even wanted for the US to get involved in this situation. But the US could play a role because, of our, you know, hegemony and also like some of our like ongoing support for Israel and in terms of like making sure that the deaths to civilians that are like have already happened from Israeli military strikes and what may end up being an occupation for at least a little while are kept to a minimum. That it would be great if we used our moral weight to try to do better there, get Israel to do better there, rather.
I'm okay with all of that.
I don't
We
think Hamas is like gonna listen to whatever the heck the United States wants unless it's you know, getting concessions. Maybe they will, but it's I'm less optimistic about that. It can happen. It's just
well, yeah, Hamas is a fundamental religious sect that wants violence. They did get elected back in 2004, 2005 to be in the government there, but that
and haven't had any
doesn't.
election since. It's like
Yeah, that
2006.
doesn't change what they
Yeah,
really are, and that's a religious theocracy hell bent on the destruction of Israel. Uh, that that also doesn't minimize their plight, being a neighbor to Israel and being forced to stay there by Egypt, and Israel. So there is a plight there that I'm sympathetic to, but overall, you know, Kathy Hochul, don't go to Israel. Joe Biden, actually go. I'm fine with it. You
yeah.
know what I mean? It's like, all right. It's not just a virtue signal when the president goes. It's
No,
something
it's
that's important.
something we sort of expect.
Yeah.
Um, but eh, yeah. Anyway, so stuff from Kathy Hochul aside, and of course we're looking at all this stuff, and we got, I don't know, we still got like 10 minutes left in the, or 8 minutes left in this segment. But one thing that I do like, I have noticed that like when it comes to this stuff is it's the same thing we talked about in the run up and kind of ongoing stuff online in relation to like the Ukraine war. Like there's going to be a bunch of unclear information that's going to happen in these wars. Everyone wants to like jump on like and like immediately believe like what's happening on their side, and the fact of the matter is it's kind of messy. And so like I'm not tweeting a lot about any of this stuff. I'm not retweeting stuff. Like so like the thing that people were talking about today in relation to this is like the hospital that
Sure.
blew up, right? And there's hundreds of people dead, you know, men, women, and children. Like it's awful situation, right? And
They're saying 500 people
yeah,
died in this event. It's pretty serious. People that were looking to shelter away from the violence, people that were looking to for treatment, for injuries, for sickness, the sick people that were already in the hospital. Upwards of 500 people are casualty of war right now. And that's where we don't know if it's the ghost of Kiev, like who struck here. Like Hamas is saying it's Israel, Israel is saying it's Hamas.
yeah.
We how do we judge this from thousands of miles
Right.
away?
And that's the thing. That's why I'm trying not to jump in with like the hot takes. Everyone's jumping in with like whatever their like preconceived notions are, and they're like stating an opinion and their moral outrage and this stuff. And so like you get the like anti-Israel side being like, look, Israel bombed a hospital. And the evidence for that is Israel said that the IDF said that like Hamas is likely using hospitals to like store weapons and to run bases of operations, which they have done before. And you know, they gave warnings that they might bomb any place, including hospitals that are using bases like that for operations and weapon storage, etc., because they're trying to root out Hamas. So they're like, look, Israel said they were going to do it, and then they did it. There you go. And then you know, Hamas said, look, they did that. But on the other side, the IDF is saying, well, it kind of looks like this is a failed rocket attack. It looked like that there's some group that wouldn't, some kind of offshoot group over there, like the Palestinian Jihad group or whatever. They tried to launch a rocket, and there's video of this too. What looks like it's a legitimate thing. It looks like they tried to launch a rocket. It got up, didn't quite go off. The rocket failed. It crashed down. Happened to crash down in a hospital. And so they see that, and then the anti-Israel folks are like, no, like this is just way too convenient. That is what happened. You know, and then they're digging into timestamps and all this stuff. And, you know, other folks are pointing out like, it kind of looks like maybe the rocket was shot down too. So maybe the IDF shot down this rocket that was aimed at them. And then this was just like an unintended like consequence of that. I don't really know. Like I'm trying to look at the situation. You know, and this is all for like understanding the truth of this one specific incident in which hundreds of people died, and most people aren't going to take that much time to look at it, much less even the people like involved in this, right? Like the people whose lives are being like upended and destroyed by this. Like they don't have like the luxury of looking at this. It's just anger. um
You can't blame them, and you can't blame either side here for being angry. Like that's the casualty, like the first casualty of war is truth. We've talked about that in the past, and when we get into this that's why I get to this point where I'm just like, okay, well, I'm anti-war. Like, let's figure out a way to stop this war. And when I don't know how we get there with what's been going on for generations between Israel and Palestine. Do you? Any
yeah,
ideas?
no,
Like I'm here for any ideas at all.
be great. Well, yeah. uh if I had the right idea, I mean, honestly, if I gave you guys a simple answer, like, oh, we just need to do this, like, it would either be horrifying or wildly naive. Possibly
Yeah,
both, right? Like, yeah, like, okay,
possibly both. Yeah.
the simple answer is like, all right, why not just like turn Gaza into glass? Okay, that's horrifying. Like, we should not do that. There are people like
Right.
actually suggesting that, and those people are awful. Like, again, there are lots of like innocent people in that area who didn't ask for any of this. No, we should not just like kill all of them. That's awful. Or naive, like, why don't we just tell them to talk? Like, I've seen some of that stuff. Oh yeah, why didn't we just think of that? Why did we just tell them to talk, ignoring like 100 years of like going back and forth on this stuff, like some of which
Families have
has included like lots of discussion.
Yeah, families have lost family members. Generations have lost parents and grandparents to this never-ending cycle of war, and people want to minimize this and say they want to tell me that I'm playing some sort of moral equivalency game when I want to talk about a cycle of war that's been going on between these two relatively civilized sets of human beings. Like Hamas. Okay, correct. Like back it up. There is no excuse for Hamas and its religious theocracy and its desire to wipe Israel off the face of the planet. There's no excuse for that. But
Yeah.
there's people living in Gaza that are not Hamas, that can only they're basically occupied by Israel on one side and then ruled by a religious theocracy on the other side. Like how
And then
that's
yeah, if they
really
want to
unjust.
escape, like no one wants them either. Like
The,
for various
Egypt's
reasons,
not
like
letting them out. Yeah,
yeah,
Egypt's not
like
letting them
Egypt
out.
doesn't want them let them out. Like for like one is like they're worried that they might go there and just use that as a staging ground to cause trouble, which is understandable, honestly. And then two, they like there's like this whole like thing where they think if they let the Palestinians into their country, they'll never be able to return to Gaza, which is not totally unfounded. And then three, they want Palestinians to be able to do that because they're sort of like politically and ideologically and religiously invested in the cause of like having that be Palestinian like land, right? Which
Yeah.
which kind of ends up using Palestinians as pawns in their like broader ideological goals, which isn't fair to them, when most of them just want safety, right? Right? It's
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it expressed as they're a sword that's held at Israel's throat, and I think that on some level they absolutely are. Especially the innocent Palestinians in the Gaza, but Hamas is the sword at Israel's throat, and they want this. They want to be there. What they really want is for Israel to blow up hospitals and to blow up things where they can turn public sentiment against Israel. That's what they want. Let's be
yeah.
very real about that. That's
No, they're hoping to provoke that reaction, but
sure.
now, all that being said, there's a lot of folks like you gotta take a side on this. You have to. There's there is fundamentally evil folks in this. So we're going to talk about some of that, some of the moral equivalent stuff when we come back. But in the meantime, we're running out of time here on A Free Solution on WYSL, so we're going to have to head to break. Thanks again for joining us on A Free Solution. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, man. It's a
Yeah.
wild thing. War is worse than hell, right? That old MASH quote, right? Where
Yeah.
Hawkeye and Father Mulcahy are having a conversation, and Father Mulcahy and Hawkeye's like, war is worse than hell. And Father Mulcahy is like, well, why is that? And he's like, well, in hell, there's no innocent people, and in war, innocent people are basically everywhere. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's a reality. And that goes back to MASH, and it was pretty well done.
Yeah.
It's a meme that's been making it around.
Yeah, I'll see that a lot. Yeah, and we had made some of this stuff. We're supplying both sides of the arms, Patricia. Yeah, like again, sort of.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where like, yeah, we're 100% supplying Israel with arms. Like, no, that's pretty clear. Hamas, it's like a little bit more ambiguous. It's more like supplying Palestinians in Gaza with like food aid and things like that, which offsets cost for them to be able to just buy more weapons. So sometimes that humanitarian like spirit is kind of abused. And then we talked about the like the Iran assets thing, which like it's not as simple as we just gave Iran $1 billion or $6 billion. It's more like we negotiated with terrorists who were
And then
and
pretending
let
that
them like take some of their own money back is kind of what
right.
it was.
And then there's this whole pretense that money is not, it can't possibly be used for, nefarious ends because we have, we're keeping track of it. And that's not really good enough. That's not a good answer. They had $6
No.
million that they didn't have. Man, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
wild.
But no, we should probably go back and uh well, actually, we'll get to like one more from Shelley. Shelley, Cuomo was zero help during Hurricane Irene in New York. Yeah, he thought he could help a tropical island. Fun photos. Cuomo in Prattsville wearing white as Pete Lopez's mucking mud. Best photo ever. I mean, it's just a politician thing. They want to be in the places where they look like they're part of the action.
Yeah. He went down and helped clean the subways, bro. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was wild. That was just so wild. The guy
Like,
is funny.
no,
Can't
as
wait for him to be president.
I would love like I'm sure that there's some politicians out there where like jumping in and helping feels like actually sincere and helpful and not just like staged.
It
But
always looks staged.
yeah, it almost always does. Like I'm sure that there are instances where like actual help has been given and they've like been knowledgeable and not just like in the way, right?
Ron DeSantis with his white boots during the last little
Right.
episode down in Florida. He
Right.
looked awful. It was not a great photo op, and there was no way he was physically being helpful. He was just in the
No.
way.
No, and like it's just like I don't know what that like other than like they're hoping that like again they catch some of that glory, but like most of the time like if they come in and they do it and they don't tell the press and they don't come in with a whole big like which is not possible like in a lot of positions, but if they actually just come in quietly, maybe they mask up so people don't know who they are and they just jump in and help. Okay, I'll buy it. If I
Yeah,
don't see a single like photo of it until like 3 months later, I'll buy it. But
sure.
but most of the time that's not how it happens. It just they get in the way.
I would think if I was Israel, would I want 15 governors from the United States coming over? I don't know, man. I really don't
Maybe.
know.
I mean, like it's I'm sure like it depends. Like there's some folks who are like we see this as a policy relationship building thing where they're going to go talk to their state delegations and like give support for any aid packages that might come up.
Yeah,
Again, I made the case. I don't really think Israel like really needs it in the same way that like you could make a different case for Ukraine. Again, setting aside like all the risks involved with that, but like you know Ukraine being invaded and not having the same level of resources for defenses as Israel, which has known about this problem and invested heavily in addressing the problem of attacks from Hamas for a long time, and then like just failed in this sense. Which again, and the politics of it don't play out in the same way that they play in the U.S. I assumed initially like, oh, people will like rally around like Netanyahu. It's not really how it's working out though. A lot of people are just mad at him.
even Trump kind of went after him. To
Yeah.
be honest with you.
Well, I mean, I wasn't even talking about the American side, but I mean, like in among like Israelis, they're like, hey, we traded a bunch of our like liberty for security, and the deal was you protect us, and then you didn't. What?
Don't get me started on Israel's strict gun control policy with the promise of keeping you safe from your neighbor's guns, when in fact that costs people's lives to be unarmed and unprepared.
Yeah,
You can't. It cost your neighbor their lives. Like that's a reality, and I don't know how people can equivocate gun control to safety anyway. Like good people have guns. Terrorists seem to be able to. Terrorists and bad guys always seem to be able to find weapons of one kind or another. So, what in the world kind of like? How do people get to that conclusion that they're safer without their neighbor having guns? Like, I don't know how they get to that conclusion. I just don't
I
understand.
don't know. Yeah, interesting, particularly in that situation. And interesting if they would change their minds about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's Hezbollah is on the other side of them. The West Bank is also an area rife with violence. So,
Yeah.
how did they convince the Israeli people to give up their weaponry? I don't know. like the
Yeah.
promise of safety that they obviously can't. The Iron Dome that failed. Like however you want to look at
Yeah.
it.
Well, I mean, they even fail. Like they found a way to get around it in that, like they just
Right. Okay.
parachute
That's
it in, and the way the Iron Dome like fails is that it gets overwhelmed, right? Like it's pretty good, but there's only so many hundreds of rockets you can send at that system before a few slip through, right? Like
yeah, it
that's
was an incredibly good buy. They only spent $230 million setting it up. But I mean, by today's standards, it's epic, but still,
yeah.
that's what eventually it's gonna fail. Eventually somebody's gonna outsmart it, and here's how you do it, you know?
That's you outsmarted by throwing enough stuff at it that, like, again, like every missile, like the Patriot system's like that too. Like it's
Yeah.
pretty good, but like you send enough stuff at it, like stuff's gonna slip through. Like I mean,
Yeah.
that's not a sustainable strategy from the other side. So, but anyway, we should go back. Let's get back to doing the show. We're gonna go
Okay.
back in 3. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Marion O'Connor. We're back.
I'm here, Kevin.
We're
I'm
back.
here.
We're
I
talking.
wanna
Go ahead.
yeah, I wanna throw something in your lap. I ran a poll on my Twitter page, and basically I asked a question about a moral equivalency because everybody seems to be talking about moral equivalency between Iran or between Israel and Hamas. And I asked simply, is there a moral equivalency between innocent people and innocent people? And obviously everybody can infer what the subject is, but
Yeah.
amazingly enough, it's not 100%. The answer is not 100% yes to zero. It's something like 70% yes to 30% no, meaning that even if you're innocent, but you're affiliated with a group that they don't like, you are not innocent anymore. And I was kind of offended by that. And so we get into these conversations, and I'm sure you've got things you want to say, but I thought I'd start our conversation with that poll, and I was a little bit surprised by the results, especially with my group of people. Of course, some of them could have been messing with me, but
Yeah. I mean, I will sometimes pick the intentionally wrong answer in your polls, admittedly, Tim.
oh,
Not in this one though. I didn't do it in this one, but occasionally I'll like, all right, what answer is gonna bother Tim? All right, let's
yeah, yeah.
um
And I mean, I did laugh, and it started right off. The first couple, 5, 6 people all said no. There's no moral equivalence between innocent people and innocent people, and I was a little bit shocked, but also kind of thinking maybe I was getting messed with a little bit.
yeah,
Um,
could be.
so
But
go ahead, please.
yeah, I mean, they're so like some of this like stuff comes from like there's like the moral equivalency discussion is a thing that goes back a while, right? Like it's kind of discussing whether or not like you can kind of like hand wave away moral atrocities of one government because it's not really fair to compare them to the much greater moral atrocities of another government, right? Like, so some of this discussion goes back to like the Cold War, right? Where you look at what the United States did in some of its actions during the Cold War, and people might say, yeah, it's bad, but look at the Soviet Union, right? There's no moral equivalency there because their evil is so much greater that like it's not even like close to an apples to apples comparison of like what these two powers are doing. And then the same comparison on the micro level will happen on between Israel and Hamas, and people say, okay, yes, Israel has killed some civilians, but like the fundamental evil of what Hamas does is so great that it doesn't compare to like whatever Israel does in order to wipe that evil out. It's sort of like a more complicated version of ends justify the means, as I understood the argument. And people do the reverse of that too, where they'll say the same thing, like, well, yes, what Hamas did in that attack on the concert and killing thousands of people. Well, that was resistance, right? And like that can't really be compared to like the evils of Israeli occupation and like systematic bombing and oppression that has happened there. Um, and
So
so go
they
ahead.
take two valid points, mash them together, and pick a side, right? Isn't
Yeah,
that what they're really kind of doing? That is not a sign of enlightenment for me, Kevin. I want to be honest with you, right? We're
yeah,
getting into this situation where, regardless of what they say, there's innocent lives at stake in the meat grinder of war. That's the moral equivalence. That war is always going to be the meat grinder, right? So how does one, again, like you were saying, you made a good point about people, even there was a representative from Tennessee, I think, was going out and saying, no, that's resistance, that's what's right, this is justice. And it's like,
oh yeah.
decolonize Israel, and it's like, it's too late for that, pal.
No, there's
You
a
know what I mean? Like,
bunch
knock
of
it off.
morons saying this. So this is what decolonization looks like. All right, no,
Yeah,
that's you don't need to butcher a bunch of you know random folks, Israelis, children. We gosh, we could talk about the whole debate too. This goes into like where babies beheaded and stuff too. That's a whole messy thing.
that is a
That's
messy
similar.
thing. May or
Yeah,
may not be true, we don't know.
I
Again,
mean, definitely a bunch of babies died. like
yeah,
like
yeah,
young
for
kids
sure.
did die. It's yeah, people are doing the same thing I talked about with the rocket attack thing, where like they're picking apart or they're finding one thing that's not true or is misunderstood, and then they're saying it's not true, and then like there's exaggerations coming from like the Israeli government too, like or misunderstandings depending on how you want to do that. That's a whole other thing. But the moral equivalency issue, like one thing that I want to mention with that too is that like what gets like washed over in all this is it really collectivizes people, right? Like it's a collectivizing thing, and it
Yeah,
washes away two things. One, the individual culpability and actions, um, of like people who do evil things, right? Like because there is the people in Hamas do like evil things and butcher people. Yeah, that's bad, and it's not just like they're a part of a collective struggle resisting against another collective. No, they're individuals doing evil actions. They chose to do those things, and same with like the other side of that too on the Israeli side. There's soldiers in the IDF who commit war crimes. Like it is a thing, right? Like they're people who do bad things, and those individuals and the systems that are responsible for it, like deserve some level of at minimum scrutiny, if not like accountability and consequences for doing evil things. And then on the other side of that too, it's also like you lose like the innocence in that. Like you again, that coming back to your poll again, you lose like, okay, now because everyone's collectivized, like, oh, all those people in Gaza, all of them, well, they're all part of like this same thing, this same body that's like acting towards like a whole. And I think I saw people respond to like, oh, like 90% of people voted for Hamas. Like, okay, yeah, like, but the some of these elections aren't exactly like on the up and up, and again, there's a reason they
yeah,
haven't had
yeah,
elections in a while. Like these situations are messy, and and people in that region have complicated feelings about this stuff, right? And again, it's not to say that everyone's innocent or I would even agree with those folks. They agree with me on darn near anything. Like they're not going to be classical liberals, but also like a lot of those folks are mostly just trying to live their lives. Not all of them. There's some bad folks out there, and same with like the Israelis who are many of whom just trying to live their lives. There's the whole complicated history of like why a lot of like Jewish folks fled to Israel because they felt that was the only safe place that they can be, and I sort of get it.
mhm,
Again, the consequences of doing that are messy, but I sort of get it. And I've talked to people who are like refugees who lived in Israel for a while because like they fled another country where they would have been killed for being Jewish, and so they went there because they
yeah.
thought they'd be
I
safe
mean,
there. I get it.
Osama bin Laden was pretty famous for saying, "Well, there's no innocent people in the United States of America because they all vote for this stuff." Like,
Yeah, right.
this is the terrorist mindset. We can't. That's why when we collectivize, I think that's a great word when we're talking about this. When we collectivize on that level, and we cannot come up with an equivalency between innocent people and innocent babies, like that's the only real equivalency here: the guilty of war crimes or the innocent life being again destroyed, um through war. Do you ever read any of Dennis Prager's stuff?
Occasionally.
Okay, well, he in the Daily Signal, he has moral equivalence means either moral confusion or hatred of Israel. So he has to
Mhm.
go automatically to the binary, and he occasionally comes up with reasonable anti-war kind of platitudes um, that criticize what I call the deep state or the military industrial complex. But here he is, just kind of taking this very binary view of if either you're with us or you're against us. And lately in my mind, I've been blaming George W. Bush for a lot of stuff. I mean, I don't know. So
George
if we
W.
get
Bush, you
into
mean next Speaker of our House, George W. Bush?
that guy, yeah, I mean, the Democrats are putting him up. It's clearly a
Yeah.
time for purely
So,
bipartisan strategery
yeah.
that's going to get the House running again.
Anyway,
Anyway,
yeah. Sorry for that diversion. Just
that was great. Would have been
personal
a great
stuff.
segue into our segment about Jim Jordan, but I kind of want to
No, we'll keep
hang
talking
with it.
about this.
Yeah, I want to hang with Dennis Prager a little bit longer,
Yeah.
and where he basically criticizes Cornell West for saying something along the lines of Palestinian babies are as precious as Israeli babies, and he comes back with, "Well, no one's saying that they're not, but Israel still has the right to defend itself by destroying the Gaza Strip." You know what I mean? Like that. That's
Yeah.
his basic argument, and I. So he's saying there's no moral equivalency between Hamas and Israel. And I think people like myself and you and Cornell West and our friends in the audience are saying, yes, but there is a moral equivalence between innocent people and innocent people who get tossed into a meat grinder. Like
Yeah.
that's the equivalence that we're talking about. And he wants it to be something else. I don't know. He wants to support, of course, war on some level. The conservatives weren't really happy with the Ukrainian war, but they need a war that they can be happy with.
Yeah. And yeah, they certainly are a bit more gung ho in this situation.
And I hope
And
people understand that that feels real to me because I am so anti-war. I got called Rashida Tlaib and AOC in a couple of Twitter arguments. I got lit up with Austin Peterson because he's kind of going down a neocon path after being relatively consistent against the military-industrial complex. And
yeah,
so I just asked him a couple questions. He ignored me, but a few other people commented. And one of the people were like, "Well, you sound like a leftist." And I'm like, "Well, I'm pretty anti-war. Like, I don't know that that makes me a leftist. Like, can I be a leftist being like pro self-defense, pro individual rights, pro individual liberty, pro free speech, pro Second Amendment, pro Fourth Amendment, pro human beings' privacy, pro property rights? Can I actually be a collectivist leftist when those are the things that I believe? Or can I simply say the military industrial complex looks kind of sketchy and I think war is awful? You know
yeah.
what I mean? Can I say
And
that?
yeah, and actually, so I'm gonna share his comment, and I'm gonna like kind of give the argument that I think Austin Peterson's trying to make here. So Patricia says, "Why haven't we, as society on Earth, moved past war as an expensive solution?" Right,
Great
and
question.
so
Really is.
which is I get it, it's fair, but we can't always assume that other people are going to be as reasonable as we are, or at least we'd like to think we are, right? And so if you're taking this from like the Israeli perspective, they're like, okay, we're here, we exist, our country's existence is a fait accompli, like we have a right to defend ourselves now, right? So if you have
Yeah.
people who say we will kill you and like destroy every Jewish person in this region from the river to the sea, like that's their take on this. What do you do with someone who wants to exterminate you? Okay, you have
Yeah.
to defend yourself, right? Like, so like war is necessary if there is some unreasonable faction out there who wants to exterminate you. Something that like to a lot of the Jewish folks who founded Israel was a very real thing post World War II, right? So that is their country's mindset.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of Austin Peterson's point. It's like at some point you have to say violence is necessary to stop other violent people from succeeding.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree with that premise. I absolutely do. It's very, very real. Um, and so like sure, I was trying to brainstorm ideas that would solve the Israeli and Palestinian conflict, and I come up with nothing, right? Other than weird kind of full occupation, full domination, full like win the war, assimilate, occupy, and make it part of Israel, and that's it. Be done. Like take care of it that way.
Right.
And
Which
assimilation
again,
is
and
just
that
part
that
of it.
area has been part of Israel for a while too. And the concession was like, we'll let this area be independent and like do its own thing. And so that's what we're gonna get peace. We're gonna land for peace, right? That was the whole thing. And it
Mhm.
didn't work. And so yeah, now they're gonna go
Yeah,
back to
it could never work, and that's because there's the two fundamental theologies driving, or at least one is a fundamentalist, destructive theology driving the people in power, and that to me is at least as bad as government, And you guys know how much I hate government. Like it's a real
yeah.
problem.
No, I mean theology and government can functionally be the same thing sometimes, right? Like,
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that this isn't
absolutely.
an anti-religion thing. It's just that like
Yeah,
when
yeah. Sorry, yeah.
like if you
Thank you.
get into the mindset of like, we're if you don't obey us, like we are willing to hurt you and take your stuff. Like at like governments are and sometimes organized religion and sometimes just gangs can sometimes act all in the same manner, right? Just like
Sometimes just
oh,
gangs, he says.
sometimes just gangs. I
Understated.
know.
Yeah.
It's like that's what it is. That the first governments were just like gangs of people who said,
Mm,
listen to us and give us some of your stuff or we will kill you. That,
yeah. And
that's kind of how
and it
government
was
started.
Yeah, and it was pretty well combined with religion
Yeah.
at the very beginning of government and the organization of civilization. You
Yeah.
could
And some of
check any
that
history
is
book.
yeah.
It's
So some of
wild.
that's just like, and also God says that that's like this is the right thing to do, right? Like again, this
Right.
isn't a anti-religious thing that like it's people manipulating religion to justify their own power.
Sure.
Um,
First, God gave us special information that we can predict the future, and we're going to use that to make you afraid of us and beholden to us. And it was
yeah.
beautiful. It worked out very well.
But all right, we do have to head to a break. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. All right.
Yeah, I didn't really like Dennis Prager's headline. Moral equivalence is either moral confusion or hatred of Israel. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous juxtaposition and a
Well,
binary thought process.
yeah. I mean, there's things happening. There's things happening locally too with this. Like, so I don't think we're going to talk about this on the air, but like,
Okay.
there's folks who like there's a Palestinian film festival that is getting postponed for some safety reasons and stuff too. But some of the folks saying like any Palestinian like film that like draws attention to like what's going on in like the Palestinian areas and is critical of the Israeli government is almost by definition like anti-Semitic, and I don't think that's fair to do
No,
that.
I don't. That's definitely not fair.
And
That's
there's but there's so much of that like any criticism of the Israeli government gets criticized as anti-Semitic. Now, are there people who are anti-Semitic uh who hate the Israeli government for different reasons? Yeah, absolutely, that's a thing. But also, you can be critical of the Israeli government and not have it be, you know, criticism of Jewish people itself. It's a dumb game that people play, and I kind of wish folks would call it out a bit more.
right. Right. I have a little bit of. Give me a minute here to talk to my kid because he's got questions and he timed it pretty well. So
Right during break, and I can. No, you folks get to listen to me. If I look distracted, sometimes I'm looking over. And my wife is texting me right now. We think we have mice in our kitchen.
of course you do.
So,
Absolutely, it's that time of year.
so that's what it is. We've put a mousetrap. We put a mousetrap under our dishwasher area where we think there might be
Oh,
like a way to get in from the outside, and we
oh,
have gone through 3 of them in 3 days, like and I just put one under there like right before the show. My wife texted me and said, "Oh, it's already been snapped. It's already done." And I was like,
oh boy.
"Okay." All right, that lasted 20 minutes.
You'll eventually get
Ooh,
ahead of them.
yeah. So we thought we were good for a while. I know it's the time of year they're coming in, but we just had the pest control guy here like a week ago. He's like, no, it's good. I didn't see any holes. They're fine. Like everything's great. No.
They can't keep up with that. And it's the time of year as it starts turning colder, they come in. That's it. So you covered the Witness Palestine thing, which I think is kind of a real tragedy because if we're not talking about the situation and the plight and why those people are in the plight, and we cannot look. Here's the thing: I do not think that there's enough blame being laid on the rest of the Arab world, on Egypt and the rest of the Middle East, for them contributing to people in Gaza and the Palestinians being forced to stay in a bad situation. I just don't think it gets
Yeah.
talked about often enough.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So Tim, if you're good, I think maybe we'll jump back into the show and two quick things. Nope, a cat is better from Patricia, and John says Lollipop has a great deal on cats. Listen, guys, I have a cat. My cat is useless. So it's funny. I literally have a picture. We had a mouse one time that got in. Is like 2 years right before Seamus was born. It got in, and I could see it. It was on my stove. Like it got in. It was just chilling on my stove. And I have a picture of my cat sitting on a stool, just looking at the mouse.
That's
And
nice.
I took a picture and I was like, all right, Tiny, you gonna do something about it?
Get the mouse.
Get the mouse. Come on, get it. Nope. Just kind of chirped at it and then ran away. Useless.
Wow, that's wild. I have a cat that does nothing but kill things and leave them on my front doorstep.
Yeah. My
Just
cat.
like chipmunks, squirrels, mice. I mean, bunnies, birds, bats. I mean, there has been a plethora of dead animals on my front stoop. It's
Yeah.
just amazing.
I
Wow.
get bunnies. My dog will bring in bunnies. Which is
Alright.
great. When my son's old enough to understand what's happening, that's gonna be a great discussion.
It's gonna be quite a conversation.
Yeah, but he's too big to get the mice. I think like he could probably get them, but he just he's 100-pound dog. He doesn't mess with the mice.
He's too slow. He's not gonna be fast enough for
Yeah,
that.
that's right, man. He's just he's not fast enough for that.
So what's our last segment gonna be about, Kevin?
Well, so we'll talk about Janet Yellen
Okay.
and then we'll talk about the speaker stuff.
All right.
So I think those are, you know, it makes sense to go into those things. So we're gonna
Sure.
go in about 10 seconds. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim of the Freedom, Arian O'Connor.
I'm still here, Kevin. And look, we've had a pretty heavy philosophical discussion about war, moral equivalency, and I think it's time to get on to what people are really concerned about in this. Can we pay for our involvement in these wars, Kevin? What do you think?
I think money's not real. We can do whatever we want. Let's
Why do
let's
we
go
pay
nuts.
taxes then, bro? I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, like, why do we even have taxes? Like, they could just spend money. Like that we don't need any sort of balance between revenue in and expenditures out. Just spend it.
Just print it. So our the Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen, wants the entire world to know that the United States can pay for this war, that war, and plenty more wars besides.
All the
So
war we need.
good
Yeah,
news,
she
guys.
said we can absolutely afford to financially support both Israel and Ukraine in their respective war efforts.
Regardless
Which
of all the problems at home, regardless of the homeless situation, regardless of real structural fixes that I get sympathetic with the communists here when we can pay for wars everywhere, all over the world, and then we can't fix basic problems at home. Like I understand where they're coming from. I don't agree with it. I think we're making a mistake paying for everything, but still, I get sympathetic as to why they may believe that our currency is real and
right.
that our economic system is sound. I get it. I think we can just pay for war. all over the
Yeah.
place.
No, so yeah. No, it's right. Like if we could pay for that, why can't we pay for other things? There's something to that. I don't think it's like to me like I don't actually take that position. My actual position is no, we absolutely cannot afford these wars. We can't afford anything that we're doing right now. Like,
Good
oh my
point.
God, we're in so much trouble right now with how much money we've overspent and how ill prepared we are for the consequences of being able to actually to deal with the fact that we've put ourselves tens of trillions of dollars in the debt.
Yeah,
Um,
$33 trillion. I think we just breached that. It's an amazing time to see our debt mushrooming. Like it looks like the Amazon stock chart. And when I see that, I wonder, like, will there ever be consequences? Because my entire life we've always warned about this spending. And I can tell you that one of the consequences is like, and I say it as a joke. Um, we are being robbed of technological advancement very rapidly. I'm not kidding when I think we should have flying cars, but the government has stolen a certain percentage of our technological advancement through devaluation. We are living in a time of abundance. They manipulate us into hating our neighbor and thinking we're living in a time of scarcity. And we could be even richer, and the government doesn't allow it. They steal that money and blow up pieces of metal and you know support wars. So it's the broken windows fallacy. It's bad money policy. It's all of those things all rolled into one. That's what our government's doing. How's that?
yeah, no,
How's that
I
make
think
you
that's
feel?
good. And again, and that's part of my anti-war stance is that like it. And again, I genuinely like understand the argument that I was making in the last segment where I said like sometimes like wars of defense are necessary. Like I get that, and you need to
Sure.
have some preparation for that. What bothers me about what Janet Yellen said is just like how like cavalier about it she was. Like, oh yeah, like we can do that. You know, we just had a crisis a couple months ago where we weren't sure if we're going to be able to pay our bills because Congress like didn't raise the debt ceiling, didn't like give the Treasury the ability to like issue like payments for like the money that Congress had already said it was going to spend, right? Like this was a couple months ago. It
Yeah.
just happened.
Yeah. But we always have money for war, guys. Like that and in fact, maybe a larger part of the role of the United States in the entire world is, and we joke about it and we gripe about it, but being the policeman to the world, being the big dog on the block, the guy that ensures that free trade is happening when it isn't actually free trade. We have our fingers in all the pots, but that may be the only thing that's propping up our currency is our ability to make war and our ability to do violence. And I'm very concerned about that. Like,
All right.
you
So
know,
that's why we can
what
always afford it, right?
yeah. Like, what happens
And
if we actually can't support it? What
the
happens
hegemony
then?
ain't gonna maintain itself, you know, like
Yeah.
that's there's the cost to the Pax Americana, right? Like it's what it is. And I say that as like a half joke, but like also it is sort of true, right? Like part of like what happens with like free trade is like it's part of that is because our navy is all over the place, right? Like it's
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
don't mess with us, people don't mess with American ships, in part because like there will be consequences or there could be consequences for that stuff. It's not
Yeah.
it's
And
not
I'm not sure
totally
that
like go ahead.
yes. I'm not well, I'm sorry, Kevin, but I'm not sure that the world doesn't need that on some level too. That's part of the problem. There is a certain amount of being able to have the last word in an argument and the threat of ultimate violence that obviously is persuasive, which isn't the right word, but you know what I mean.
Right.
So there is perhaps there is value to that, and perhaps the world is freer because we are the right people to have had that. But I still take a look at what's going on in the world now, and someone made a comment earlier, and I believe it was Patricia, or it might have been Pat Shelley. But just it's 2023, and war is still a pretty big thing, and
Yeah.
I'm a little bit disappointed. I wanted flying cars; they're giving me war. You know?
Less of a thing than it used to be, but still a pretty big thing, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um but anyway, Should we go to somehow even more absurd news? Talk about the stuff going on with the House
I just love that they're
in
finally taking responsibility in the House of Representatives to elect an effective leader. And this isn't all
you mean
about politics and virtue signaling,
you mean
Kevin. This
George
is
Bush?
real. This is real. They
George
want
Bush,
George
right?
Bush. Yeah, there'd be Donald Trump, George Bush. Um, I mean, I, if they were serious, they could get the guy with the horns from the January 6th thing, or some guy who would ultimately understands the job, like Justin Amash, right? Who's been railing about omnibus spending and continuing resolutions for decades. It's been one of his hallmarks. A guy like Thomas Massey, who actually has principles, and I know that some of the Trump people don't understand Thomas Massey. I understand that you don't understand him. When he had that chance to put the screws to Adam Schiff, I was mad at him too, but still, it was principled, and so I get it, right? Um,
Yeah.
what are we gonna do about this? Like Jim
Uh,
Jordan is who knows what kind of deals he's cutting right now, man. That guy is just
guys,
it's wild. It's a wild time.
it is wild, and it's funny that like politics is so like broken that like you can't get like a moderate faction together to like the Democrats can talk all they want about how the Republicans are a mess, but the Democrats could be like, we can probably find like a handful of Republicans to vote for, like not their guy, like
Right.
they they're like, oh well, we're gonna try to get Hakeem Jeffries to do it. Like no, like just go
No.
pick like
Oh
anyone
my
else.
God,
And
no.
not like that was the attempt. Like someone did make a semi-serious
I
attempt
know.
at George W. Bush as a compromise candidate, but they could pick someone else. They could pick someone like Justin Mash or like some other like moderate like person like outside of the system altogether and find enough Republicans to say, hey, we're going to get someone who's just going to call balls and strikes, who's going to make sure the process works and like look like restore faith in Congress, right? Like they could do that. The Democrats could do that too. The Republicans could do that. They could find someone, and get over the fact like we're in charge, we're the majority, we're going to do our thing. No, just pick someone who's going to be able to like make the process work, like grow up for 2 seconds and just like do
Yeah.
the right thing, do the tough thing, do the thing that's not going to be politically convenient at the next election. But no one can bring themselves to do that. Like not
Yeah. It's the Democrat war cry right now is extreme MAGA Republicans are holding the House hostage. And it's like
yeah.
it's not that Kevin McCarthy failed to keep his promises to correct problems that have been going on in the House forever, that these guys aren't doing their job. They hide the fact that they're not doing their job with lies and virtue signaling. And it's when can extreme Hakeem get a grip on that? When is he going to tell the truth about that? I think never. That's what I'm
Never.
saying.
Not gonna happen. Wouldn't hold my breath for any of that stuff. And yeah, I don't know. Like it's hard to say like when they'll do that. Like I think we're gonna be sitting around for probably another few days, and then it probably will be Jim Jordan.
I think it's going to be Jim Jordan. I think this is
He's gonna make some promise that's gonna
right. There it is. You got it. It's ultimately he's going to have to make enough promises that he won't be able to keep all of them, and then everybody is going to vote for him. The Republican Party will unify behind him, and that's going to be the end of the argument. But it's actually kind of funny and it's kind of interesting insofar as Matt Gaetz and his group of they're calling them extreme right wing Republicans, but there were promises made about continuing resolutions and about um, omnibus spending. They wanted single issue bills being put forth. They wanted amendments from the floor. Kevin McCarthy did not give the people that agreed to vote for him on that condition those things, and they got rid of them. And it's actually a pretty interesting time. That's not less democracy. That's actually accountability in democracy. And I
yeah.
I love how
No,
it gets
well,
twisted.
they said like, hey, if you don't do these things, which are things that I think are pretty reasonable. There's some stuff I don't agree with, but like the reasonable things of being able to bring amendments to the floor and getting a individual like budget chunks passed.
Yeah.
If you don't do this, we're going to hold a vote to try to kick you out, and you might lose your position. And that's exactly what happened. That was the deal. And you know what? Like, good for them for actually like carrying out consequences for once and not just like rolling over for political convenience.
I'm with you, man. I think that it was a positive step in the right direction to bring some semblance of accountability back to a system that's been busted for decades now. Um,
Now, listen, are they going to be able to do the follow through with that? Who knows?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
I gotta I don't know how we're doing on time, but I got a couple local issues that I'd like to kind of put out there.
We have like 2 minutes, so go
Perfect.
ahead.
That's it. We first of all, guys, check out the Otsego County Tourism Study. I've been a long time proponent of tourism in Otsego County. It's one of the biggest reasons that we remain viable when we've crushed agriculture and when we've crushed small business. Tourism puts money in your neighbor's pockets. It saves us all tax dollars. And check out the study. I'll post a link to it on my page. And
Mm.
guys, we have a race in Otsego County for county clerk where we have a little political animal from the Democrat side, but it's not important that this person is a Democrat. It's important that this person is politically active, and that's great. I'm okay with them being politically active, but they're going after the county clerk position, and that doesn't make sense to me. That's a job for somebody that's experienced. That's a job for
Mm.
somebody with a decent idea on how to make the clerk's office run better and who's been a part of that system. Like, I'm all for get out there and be a county rep, get out there and run for your town board. All of those things are great, right? Then you can combine your virtue signaling with your political aspirations, and that's fine. I encourage you to do that, but you're in the wrong race. You should drop out, and everybody should vote for the Otsego County Clerk that's coming from the Otsego County Clerk's office. It's not about team colors anymore. Like, that's a reality.
Right.
So
I mean,
I want to
well,
say
that's what like
Jennifer,
that is a thing about it is funny when like some of these administrative positions get like so politicized. Like, all right, like we're gonna take like positions on like gosh, I've seen this in like candidate interviews too. Like, oh, I'm running for like town dog catcher, and like, do you want to hear my position on like single payer healthcare?
no,
No,
yeah,
man. I
no,
want to
no, I
know.
don't. Like,
No, like
are
I
you
want
gonna
to know if
go
you
with
could
the
do the job. Like,
yeah?
tell me you could do a job. Come on.
Eh,
But yeah,
Are you
so
gonna be the kind of dog catcher that makes people license their dogs and fines them? Or are you gonna be the kind of dog catcher that is just pretty cool with everybody and like goes and gets a really bad dog every once in a while? Like,
yeah,
that's the kind of dog catcher
that's
I want.
relevant. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we are out of time, folks. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. Have a great night. Take care. All right.
I got
Out
a
on the
funny story
WISO.
about a dog catcher since you brought that up, though, bro.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
my god.
We
So, anyways, the town of Otsego had this very aggressive dog catcher who would regularly go to people's houses and bait their dogs off their lawn and get them in their car and take them to the dog pound and make them get vaccinated and fine the people for doing. She
Oh
was
wow.
one of the most aggressive people that I've ever seen. Now, there's rules against some of the things that she does to get dogs. So I was at a party recently, and she pulled up, and it's like a big kind of on like 3-4 acres, and she pulls up, parks down the road, and there's probably I want to say 35 dogs there, and she has a dog in her car, and I just went down there and talked to her until she felt so uncomfortable that she had to leave. It was just great. I'm like, she threatened to call the cops on me, and I'm like, you know what? That would be a good idea. Let's go ahead and call the police. Let's get them here and have
Yeah.
them explain what you're doing. Like, I'm not telling you to leave, but I think that you should leave. And she
Yeah.
was, it was in a way, I see somebody that obsessed with processes and this petty tyranny that she's affiliated herself with, and I feel bad for them. But
Mhm.
still, it was kind of funny.
It's a little bit of power. That's
Yeah. Yeah, she did it for years, Kevin, like decades. She was out stealing people's dogs, writing tickets compulsively and obsessively for I- my stepson had just moved into a house. The very next day he gets a ticket. He hadn't even left his house. They had just moved in. He gets a ticket for noisy dogs barking.
dang.
Like he hadn't even been in his house 24 hours. They filmed her sitting outside of his house, opening her car door and shutting her car door, opening her car door and shutting her car door, like trying to get the dogs inside the house to bark at her. Like she was obsessed, this lady.
Weird.
And yeah, weird, dude.
They
Weird.
should bark. Someone's doing something weird outside. The dogs would be
Yeah.
right to bark at that.
Oh my God. She's just one of those people that she's part of the deep state, Kevin, in our
Part
local
of the deep
politics.
state.
Those entrenched bureaucrats out there just to make people's lives miserable.
Man, it's definitely a thing. All right. I should get going though. I'm gonna go set a new mousetrap. Scold my cat for being useless.
Good luck with
And
that.
yep,
Good luck
definitely gonna
with
listen
that.
to me. All right. Have a good night, folks. Thanks for listening tonight. Take care.